What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So I'm sure by now you've already heard the news, and if you haven't heard the news, Spider-Man is coming to PC. This is not just the new Spider-Man game or whatever. This is the Spider-Man game from 2018 and the Spider-Man game from 2020. I'm sure you're probably wondering, when in the world did Sony decide something like that? But I think the signs have always been there. In fact, on this channel, whenever I do some of my variety content, I take some time to make some videos pertaining to Spider-Man, and somewhere around last year, it was apparent to me and many of us here in the community that Sony seemed to have been laying down the groundwork to launch their Spider-Man game on the platform. If you consider the PlayStation exclusives that have made their way to PC, it didn't necessarily seem surprising. You had Death Stranding, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Days Gone. These were just some of the lineups, and there was more and more talk around the time that these games were dropping on PC that more exclusives were going to be making their way to PC. In fact, the more anticipated game, actually, for the most part anyways, was going to be the Uncharted games, which are supposed to be released there in September. But now it appears that this Spider-Man game has been moved up front in the schedule, and a lot of fans are excited. Some fans don't seem to be too excited, but I don't see any reason why you will not want to be excited for other people to be able to experience a video game. And I understand. In fact, in my other videos, when I started talking about this a while ago, I said it seemed to me that Sony's fans were not necessarily going to be too happy when they made the announcement, but the smart financial decision was to go ahead and do it nonetheless, because they needed to be able to start gaining some ground on the PC side to check Microsoft and the other PC publishers. This competition is good. You're not going to find us in a position where one person or one marketplace is going to pretty much own everything. Even the Epic Games Store, as much as I like Unreal Engine, I like the Epic Games Store and Tim Sweeney and what he's doing, all of that exclusivity does not necessarily bode too well. And I hope to use this video as an opportunity to explain my reasoning, so hang in there. Now, for those of you who may be interested in seeing some of this content that's not necessarily regarding DC games, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you really want to follow through with some of these discussions, which I think are very focused on the gaming industry and even other superhero games and even some aspects of video gaming at large, I encourage you to be able to do that so that you can add to the conversations as well. So if anyone is wondering or trying to wrap their minds around this particular announcement, we have to go to look at the numbers. I think that's what's the most convincing part of all of this. So first of all, let's go ahead and start looking at some of the different numbers in terms of sales for Spider-Man 2018. In 2018, when the game first came out, it became, according to IGN, one of the fastest selling games that PlayStation had ever seen for its exclusives. In fact, by that time, within the first 3 days of its release, Marvel Spider-Man sold 3.3 million copies. Now, let's actually see a comparison. As an exclusive, by the way, Elden Ring, its developers and its publishing company and parent company were expecting it to sell somewhere around 3 million copies in its first month. This is a game that had a broad appeal, that had the possibility of reaching every platform, and still they were estimating that it would sell 3 million. The 12 million that Elden Ring sold in that time frame was basically a blow out of the water type of reality compared to the expectations. And then if you continue to dig in further, you're going to find out that as of the end of 2020, Marvel Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 sold over 20 million units. So that number continued to go up in sales as the PlayStation 4 generation was still going on. As they started to even market more with the PS5 and a remastered version, there were still record sales because of the time and because of the ability for the game to continue to permeate the market. Now, with this success was not necessarily just the fact that the Marvel Spider-Man game was selling. Miles Morales, which came out in 2020, which also in my opinion I felt helped boost the sales of the Spider-Man game, was able to sell about 4.1 million units in 2020. So this is a very important franchise for Sony. For the longest time, it seemed like Sony was a little adamant on exploring the PC market, but as somebody who's been following the gaming industry for a while, you and I, if you've been following, kind of knew that this was the next natural progression. And And the moment they set up their own shop called PlayStation PC, which is the brand under which they're actually pushing out these ports, I knew it was only a matter of time before they were going to come ahead and say, hey, it's been a long time. We might just be able to just, drop the Spider-Man game for the PC community. And it's actually been closer than I thought. Imagine a 2018 game finally making its way to the market in terms of the PC port in 2022. But more importantly is Miles Morales, which has basically been 2 years old. This might be speaking for what the Spider-Man 2 to PC port might look like. And I definitely think that Sony is probably going to push that window a little bit up the chain. There are technical issues regarding this because they see that because of the way the new consoles are capable of playing video games, there isn't more than likely going to be a PS6 unless it's some kind of a remarkable mainframe computer like device. But for now, all consoles, which are basically in this generation, are able to play at potentially some of the best quality that you have available to a broader audience. Hence, the PC market is pretty much right there for everyone to be able to take advantage of. And Microsoft seems to be trying its best to take on the PC market, but Steam remains a force to be reckoned with. And for Steam's own marketplace, Epic Games is supposedly the check and balance and a very worthy competitor to Steam. As many as may think Epic Games might not be a good enough competitor, I think you're joking. The amount of money that they have and the amount of resources that they have, you really have to look at it a broad spectrum, especially when you include Unreal Engine and you include Fortnite and a lot of the initiatives that they have in the game developer space. But how does all of this come into play with Gotham Knights? Remember, I titled this video, Gotham Knights is going to see heavy competition. And in my opinion, I think this is actually much more of an objective reality than just me saying it from my own subjective mindset. If it was only Marvel's Spider-Man from 2018 that was going to be dropping on PC this year, I would have said, well, the competition might not necessarily be stiff. But now that Miles Morales is actually also coming to the platform, it really does put a dent in the potential amount of sales that you can have for Gotham Knights, and I'll explain. So first of all, the PlayStation exclusives that have come to PC have been brought to PC at a slightly reduced cost. Usually, PC games at launch will launch at the $59 price tag for the base on Steam, and then eventually more and more different editions will probably scale up in price. But notice when Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Days Gone, when they dropped at the price point at about $10 less than that particular amount. Now, if Spider-Man, the Marvel Spider-Man 2018, was dropping on Steam for a reduced price point, that really does provide an economic incentive for somebody to purchase the Spider-Man game over the Gotham Knights game, because the Spider-Man game is already established, already has all of the marketing, already has a lot of the reviews, the word of mouth, and the credibility as a solid superhero experience. Gotham Knights, on the other hand, is unproven. As much as they've showcased some things, there's still mixed feelings surrounding the game. Now add to that Miles Morales is a shorter game and will naturally already be priced at a low price point depending on where they want to put it. It seems to me that the competition now heightens at a different level, and if they bundle both games by the time that the Miles Morales game is coming out, then I think it's a whole wrap, man. A lot of people are going to gravitate towards that game who are PC players and eventually say, you know what, we'll probably just wait for Gotham Knights down the road. Since we're uncertain, it's a risk that we're probably not willing to take. This is where the competition comes in for Gotham Knights. And from what we've seen from Gotham Knights compared to Spider-Man 2018, I know they're different superhero games. I just have to say, both of them cannot compete. I'm a huge Batman fan and I'm a Gotham Knights enthusiast. But the truth of the matter right now is Gotham Knights will really have to shake the industry. And I don't know what the next few months hold. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong that Gotham Knights becomes like the best game ever out there. But with Spider-Man, I think the only superhero game that's going to be able to hold off to Spider-Man is Batman Arkham Knight and even Arkham City. These two games are going to be able to hold their own, no problem. In fact, when the Spider-Man game was first released, it was heavily compared to the Arkham games, and it came out to be that both games really did have a lot of solid offerings to the audiences that played them. And so I hope that Gotham Knights is able to come up with a plan, because right now this is actually steaming hot. To me, it's actually pretty good because everyone's gonna learn real quick right now, right? Sony has always had what it took to be competitive, but for the longest time, I think their business model was very much less flexible than, say, Microsoft. But now that they're trying to gain a little bit more flexibility, I think they're probably gonna be in a very strong position position. Some of the players that are already established are going to enjoy this. People like Steam, potentially even Epic Games. We're going to see the market take a very interesting turn. Now, if anyone is probably wondering, saying, well, these games are already old in terms of, say, the Spider-Man 2018 game, how do I know there are going to be a lot of sales regarding it? Well, you could have said the same thing for even God of War. As much as many people may like Kratos, is probably not even half as popular as Peter Parker, or even as popular as Miles Morales for people who really enjoy those games. So I think maybe they'll go neck and neck in terms of popularity, but Peter Parker is not your average icon in terms of video games. So if you look at the sales for, say, maybe God of War, which according to the last estimates that I saw was somewhere around the 500,000 copy range, and you think about, say, maybe doubling that or tripling that for Spider-Man, I think that eats into the potential player base of Gotham Knights, or even the potential player base of other games that may be coming out on PC at that time. This is the gaming industry that I've, in a sense, somewhat envisioned, an industry where the competition was going to make available to more players games that they probably could not get their hands on in a long time. Many on this channel may not know, but I've been calling for this Spider-Man game to make its way to other platforms since as early as maybe 2019 or even 2018 when Marvel Spider-Man dropped. And at that time, there were a lot of people in the gaming industry that said this would never happen. But one thing I've learned is never say never. You really don't know how the tides are going to change. And Sony already understands that their console is tracking way below sales. They really need to modify their agenda right now. They've done this before. This is not new. In fact, if anybody may be saying, well, you know, there needs to still be some exclusives, you have to go back and look at some games that, even though they've not necessarily been published by Sony, have been PlayStation exclusives on the console side, but also have made their way to the PC platform, thereby keeping Sony's own competitive exclusion while at the same time being able to take advantage of sales that are available on other platforms. In fact, we saw Street Fighter V, and I know this was published by Capcom, but the game still made its way to PC. In fact, the new Resident Evil game is also going to be doing the same thing. Final Fantasy games as well, you're going to notice that they're not necessarily always Xbox editions of Final Fantasy games, so from time to time Square Enix could decide where they want to publish their Final Fantasy games. So this is actually, in my opinion, a big deal. It's a big door that you can expect Sony to explore, especially now with this Spider-Man game. I think now we're going to start seeing things move in a very different direction. But so far, these are my thoughts. I know this was a longer video, but I wanted to go ahead and package as much as I could in here and just let you guys know that this is quite exciting, and I'm excited for those of you who are excited to finally get to play this game, because I understand I'm a PC gamer as well, and I have my consoles, no problem with that. But to go ahead and start shelling money to get those when you're not into content creation like I am, it doesn't make sense. You'd rather take that money and upgrade your PC to give you the best value for the unit that you game on. So let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. I really appreciate you guys so much. Thanks so much for watching the video. Peace out.